The first time Patricia called me Dad, she was standing in my kitchen, holding a chipped porcelain cup that had belonged to my wife. It was a Tuesday, October 12, 2021. I remember because I had written the date on the envelope that morning. $2, $3.50 for property taxes. Due by the 15th. I always paid early. Old habits. Old fears. Dad, you shouldn't be worrying about these things alone anymore, she said softly, placing the cup on the counter with exaggerated care, as if it were something sacred. My wife, Eleanor, had been gone for just 3 months. 3 months is a strange amount of time. Too long for condolences. Too short for silence. People stop asking how you are. They assume you've settled into grief the way dust settles on furniture. Quietly, evenly, permanently. I hadn't. I still set out 2 plates sometimes. Then I would stare at the second one until the food went cold. Patricia noticed everything. That was her gift, or her weapon. I didn't know which yet. You didn't eat breakfast, she added, opening my refrigerator without asking. There's ham, eggs. Oh, this expired. It's fine, I said. I was going to throw it out. You say that, but you don't. She smiled over her shoulder. Men your age forget these things. 72 for the record, not 90. But I let it pass. Because she said it gently. Because she made coffee afterward and handed it to me with both hands like an offering. Because my son Daniel stood behind her, watching me with something that looked like relief. She's just trying to help, Dad, he said. Help. That word would cost me $312,000 over the next 11 months. But I'm getting ahead of myself. After Eleanor died, the house became too large. Not physically, it was the same 2,800 square feet we'd lived in for 26 years. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, hardwood floors. I'd installed myself in 2009. But space behaves differently when one voice disappears. The hallway echoes. The refrigerator hum sounds louder. Even the clock in the living room ticks with accusation. Patricia filled that silence quickly. At first, it was small things. She came by twice a week, then every other day. Then she had a key. Just in case, Daniel said. In case of what, I wondered. Death? Forgetfulness? Or convenience? She reorganized my kitchen within a week. Spices alphabetized. Plates stacked differently. Eleanor's old recipe cards moved into a plastic container labeled archive, as if my wife had become a discontinued product. I noticed. Of course I noticed, but I said nothing, because Patricia always framed it as care. You deserve to rest, she told me one evening, wiping down the counter with lemon-scented cleaner. You've done enough. That phrase, you've done enough, is dangerous when you've spent a lifetime doing everything. I worked 41 years as a civil engineer. Bridges mostly, steel, concrete, calculations that had to be exact because people's lives depended on them. You learn to trust numbers in that line of work. People SO. The first transfer happened on November 3rd. $15,000. Daniel sat across from me at the dining table. The same table where I'd helped him with algebra homework 25 years earlier. Dad, it's just temporary, he said, rubbing his hands together. The condo deal fell through, and we need to cover the deposit on another place. Patricia found a great opportunity, below market value. Patricia nodded, her expression earnest. It's a short-term loan, she added. We'll pay you back within 3 months. 6 at most. I looked at the numbers she'd written on a yellow legal pad. Purchase price, $420,000. Down payment needed, $84,000. Shortfall, $15,000. Everything neat, clean, logical, like a bridge design. All right, I said, because that's what fathers do, even old ones. I transferred the money that afternoon. Bank of America .2 17 p.m. I still have the confirmation email. 3 months passed. No repayment. Instead, there was another conversation. This one on February 18th, 2022. Dad, we ran into some unexpected costs, Daniel began, not meeting my eyes. Closing fees were higher than projected. Patricia added smoothly. And there were structural issues, nothing major. But it required immediate attention. How much? I asked. They exchanged a glance. Quick. Practiced. $8,500, Daniel said. I leaned back in my chair. The kitchen smelled faintly of burnt toast. I had forgotten it in the toaster again. Patricia had pointed out earlier, gently like everything else. You're under a lot of stress, she had said. It's normal to forget things. Normal? Didn't you budget for contingencies? I asked now. Patricia smiled. We did. But life happens, Dad. Life. Another expensive word. I transferred the money the next morning. $8,500. February 19th, H.9:03 a.m. This time I didn't write it down. That was my first mistake. By March, Patricia was handling my bills. Just to simplify things, she said, sitting beside me with my laptop open. You don't need the hassle. She set up a shared access account. View only, she assured me. I believed her, because by then, she had already started bringing me my morning coffee. Every day, 8:30 sharp. Routine is important, she would say. And I, apparently, was a man who needed managing. The house changed in subtle ways after that. New curtains in the living room, gray, instead of Eleanor's floral ones. A different brand of coffee, stronger, more bitter. My study became Daniel's workspace 3 days a week. Just temporarily, they said. Temporary things have a way of becoming permanent when you don't object. And I didn't. Not yet. Looking back, the signs were there. Of course they were. They always are. But grief dulls your instincts. Loneliness rewrites your standards. When someone fills your empty house with movement, with voices, with the illusion of family, you don't question their intentions. You welcome them. You thank them. You hand them your life, piece by piece, and call it trust. I did all three. And Patricia? She accepted everything with a smile so warm it almost felt like love. Almost. If you believe older voices still matter, support this channel with a like and a subscription. By April, I no longer pay my own bills. That realization didn't come as a sudden shock. It arrived slowly, like dampness creeping into a wall. First invisible, then undeniable. It started with the electricity. I remember the exact number because it bothered me in a way I couldn't quite explain. $486.27 for March. Nearly double my usual. I was standing in the hallway, holding a printed statement, when Patricia walked past me with a basket of freshly folded laundry. My laundry, though I hadn't asked her to do it. Something wrong, Dad? She asked. I held up the paper. The electric bill. It's unusually high. She didn't even look at it. Oh, that, she said, shifting the basket on her hip. Daniel's been working from home more. Plus, you've been using the heater a lot. I keep it at 70, I replied. She smiled, patient, gentle, slightly condescending. At 72, your body feels temperature differently. It's normal. Normal again. Everything had an explanation now. And every explanation had the same quiet conclusion. I was the problem. I let the paper fall onto the console table. All right, I said. Short answer. No resistance. That was how she preferred it. A week later, I noticed something else. My bank balance. Not empty, nothing so dramatic, but lighter, like a wallet after an unplanned dinner. I logged in around 10:40 p.m. The house was quiet except for the hum of the dishwasher Patricia had insisted on running every night. Checking account. $12,430.18. It should have been closer to 20. I frowned, scrolling through transactions. There were familiar ones, utilities, groceries, insurance. And then there were others. April 3rd, transfer to D. Collins, $6,000. April 7th, Zelle transfer, $3,200. April 9th, online payment, $2,750. Mortgage Services, LLC. I stared at the screen longer than I'd like to admit. Not confusion. Not yet. Recognition. I knew those numbers hadn't been there before. The next morning, I mentioned it casually over breakfast. Patricia had made scrambled eggs. Too soft. Eleanor used to cook them firm, with a little butter and black pepper. Patricia, I said, cutting into the eggs. There were a few transfers I didn't recognize. She didn't react immediately. That was her strength timing. Oh, she said after a pause, sipping her coffee. Yes, around 12,000 total. Daniel shifted in his chair, but said nothing. Patricia set her cup down carefully. Dad, we talked about this, she said. Did we? For the house, she continued. Remember? The refinancing process. It's more efficient to route payments through your account temporarily. I looked at Daniel. He nodded quickly. Too quickly. Yeah, Dad, it's just logistics. Logistics? I had spent 4 decades dealing with logistics. They were usually documented. Why wasn't I informed before the transfers? I asked. A small question, a reasonable one. Patricia's expression changed, just a fraction. The warmth cooled by a degree. We didn't want to burden you with every little detail, she said. You've been under enough stress. There it was again. Stress, age, forgetfulness. A quiet narrative forming around me. I'm capable of understanding my own finances, I said. The words came out sharper than intended. Daniel sighed, loudly. Dad, no one's saying you're not, he said. But you've been distracted lately. Distracted. Patricia reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. Her skin was warm, steady. Grief affects everyone differently, she said softly. Sometimes people don't even realize how much it's impacting their judgment. Judgment. That word landed harder than the others. I withdrew my hand. I see, I said. And I did. Not fully. Not yet. But enough to feel the first crack. After that, things accelerated. Subtly. Efficiently. By May, Patricia had organized all my financial documents into labeled folders. By June, she had suggested consolidating my accounts. Fewer accounts means less confusion, she explained. The consolidation moved $120,000 into what she called a joint management structure. Temporary, of course. Always temporary. I signed the papers on June 14th. I remember because it was raining that day. A steady, gray drizzle that blurred the windows and made the house feel smaller. Patricia sat beside me, guiding each page. Here, Dad. Initial here, and here. Her pen hovered just above the lines, precise, patient. Daniel stood by the window, checking his phone. I didn't read everything. That was my second mistake, or perhaps my biggest. The house no longer felt like mine by July, not in any official sense. My name was still on the deed. The property taxes were still paid for my account. But ownership isn't just legal. It's atmospheric. The television channels had changed. The living room furniture had been rearranged. Even the scent of the house was different. Lavender instead of Eleanor's faint vanilla candles. My study was now permanently occupied. Just until things settle, Daniel had said. Things never settled. The moment everything shifted, the moment doubt became certainty, came on August 3rd, a Wednesday, 8:12 p.m. I had gone to the kitchen for water. The hallway light was off, the house quiet. Their voices came from a living room. I wasn't meant to hear them. That's the last of it, Patricia was saying. Between the transfers and the account consolidation, we're at about, $312,000. Daniel whistled softly. Not bad. Not bad. I stood still. The glass in my hand felt heavier than it should have. What about the house? Daniel asked. A pause. Then Patricia laughed. Soft, confident. We'll get there, she said. One step at a time. He already trusts me. It's just paperwork. Paperwork. I had built bridges that carried thousands of people safely every day. And now my life, my home, my savings, my dignity had been reduced to paperwork. I stepped back quietly, returning to my room without making a sound. Sat on the edge of the bed, listened to my own breathing. Slow, controlled. 72 years old. Not confused. Not distracted. Not finished. For the first time in months, my mind felt clear. Sharp in a way it hadn't since before Eleanor died. And in that clarity, one simple thought took shape. They weren't helping me. They were emptying me, piece by piece, dollar by dollar. With a smile, I looked at the nightstand, at Eleanor's photograph. You always said I trusted too easily, I murmured. The silence didn't answer. But for the first time in a long, I didn't need it to. The next morning, I woke up at exactly 6:00. Old habits don't disappear just because someone starts managing your life. They wait, quietly, patiently, like tools in a locked drawer. For months, my mornings had been dictated by Patricia's routine. Coffee at 8:30, soft voices, careful observations about my condition. But that day, August 4th, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I moved first. The house was still. No footsteps upstairs. No hum of conversation. Even the refrigerator seemed quieter, as if it too was waiting. I dressed slowly. Blue shirt, the one Eleanor used to iron with too much starch. Gray slacks. Shoes polished the night before out of sheer restlessness. At 6:25, I was in the kitchen. I made my own coffee, not Patricia's bitter blend, but the old brand I'd hidden behind a box of cereal weeks ago without realizing why. The smell was softer, familiar. I didn't drink it. Instead, I poured it into the sink and rinsed the cup. Then I took Patricia's mug from the cabinet, filled it with water, and placed it on the table. Routine, after all, is important. At 7:10, I left the house. No note, no explanation. The air outside was cool, carrying that faint early morning stillness that makes everything feel possible or dangerous, depending on your situation. I drove to the bank, Bank of America, same branch I'd used for 18 years. The teller recognized me immediately. "Good morning, Mr. Harris," she said with a polite smile. "How can I help you today?" "I need full statements," I replied. "All accounts. Last 12 months. Her smile faltered slightly. "Of course. Just a moment. Paper has a weight to it. Not just physical, though the stack she handed me was thick enough, but psychological. Numbers printed in black ink carry a kind of authority that screens don't. They don't disappear when you blink." I sat at a small desk near the window and started reading. Line by line, date by date, transfer by transfer. At first, it was just confirmation of what I already suspected. Then it became something else. A pattern. Not random. Not careless. Precise. Every transfer spaced just enough to avoid attention. Every amount calibrated. $3, $200, $6,000, $2,750. Never large enough alone to trigger alarms, but together, $300, $12,000. The number sat there at the bottom of my handwritten calculation. Clean. Final. I stared at it for a long time. Not anger. Not yet. Just recognition. They hadn't been improvising. They'd been executing. At 9:40, I made my second stop. "Margaret?" I said into the phone. "Daniel," she replied automatically, then paused. "No, sorry. Wrong voice. Mr. Harris?" "My voice hasn't changed that much," I said. She laughed softly. "It's been a while. What can I do for you?" Margaret Klein had been my accountant for 12 years. Careful, methodical, the kind of person who noticed inconsistencies before they became problems. "I need you to look at something," I said, "and I need you to be thorough." There was a brief silence. "I always am," she replied. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Her office smelled like paper and old coffee. Nothing had changed. Same beige walls, same metal filing cabinets, same small plant on the windowsill that looked like it had given up on life years ago. Margaret adjusted her glasses as I placed the stack of statements on her desk. "This looks serious," she said. "It is." She didn't ask questions immediately. That was another thing I appreciated about her. She read, 10 minutes, 20. Her pen moved occasionally, making small notes in the margins. At one point, she stopped. "Did you authorize these?" she asked, tapping a cluster of transfers. "Some," I said. "Not all." She nodded slowly. "And this account?" she continued, pointing to the consolidated fund. "Joint management?" "Yes." "With whom?" I hesitated. "My daughter-in-law." Margaret leaned back in her chair. "That's unusual," she said carefully. "Yes," I replied. "I'm beginning to understand that." She removed her glasses and looked at me directly. "Mr. Harris, based on what I'm seeing here, this isn't just mismanagement." I waited. "This is systematic." There it was again, a word that belonged in my world. Engineering, structure, intent. "Can it be reversed?" I asked. "Some of it," she said. "But we need to act quickly, and we need documentation." "I can get that." She raised an eyebrow. "How?" I thought about the conversation from the night before. "We're at about, $312,000. We'll get there. It's just paperwork." "I'll find a way," I said. Margaret studied me for a moment longer, then nodded. "All right," she said. "First step, we freeze what we can. Second, we consult a lawyer. Third," she paused, "we gather proof. Proof, not feelings, not suspicions, evidence." For the first time since Eleanor died, I felt something close to purpose. I returned home at 11:15. Patricia was in the kitchen, exactly where I expected her to be. "Dad," she said, her voice carrying just the right amount of concern. "You left early." I was worried. Worried. Of course she was. "I couldn't sleep," I replied, setting my keys down. She glanced at the untouched mug on the table. You didn't drink your coffee? I wasn't in the mood. A flicker of something crossed her face. Brief. Almost imperceptible. Then it was gone. Well, she said lightly. You should have told me. Routine is important. Yes, I agreed. It is. Daniel entered the room, tying his tie. Everything okay? He asked. Everything's fine, I said. And for the first time, that wasn't entirely a lie. Because now I knew, not guessed, not suspected, knew. I walked past them toward my room, my step steady. Behind me, I could feel Patricia watching, measuring, adjusting. Good. Let her. Because she wasn't the only one who understood systems, or patience, or how to build something carefully, piece by piece, until the moment it was ready to collapse. And this time, I would be the one deciding when. The first recording happened by accident. Or at least, that's what I told myself. August 6th, Saturday, 9:18 a.m. Patricia had just handed me my coffee, 8:30 sharp as always, and stepped out to take a call on the back porch. Daniel was upstairs, shower running, pipes groaning the way they always had since 2014 when I'd meant to replace them and never got around to it. I was sitting at the kitchen table, the mug warm in my hands, when her voice drifted in through the slightly open window. No, not yet, she said. He's still signing everything without question. A pause, then a quieter tone. I told you we're close. Another month, maybe two. I set the mug down slowly, careful not to make a sound. Yes, I know the market, she continued. That house is worth at least $780,000 now. Probably more with the updates we've done. We, not I, not he, we. My hand moved almost on its own. The phone was already in my pocket. I had put it there that morning for a reason I hadn't fully admitted to myself. I pressed record. Power of attorney is the last step, Patricia said. Once we have that, everything else is just paperwork. Paperwork. Always paperwork. And Daniel, the voice on the other end, must have asked something. Patricia laughed softly. Daniel does what I tell him, she said. The words landed with a strange clarity. Not shocking, not even surprising, just final. I stopped the recording at 9:22. For minutes that would change everything. From that day on, I became attentive, not outwardly. Outwardly, I remained exactly what they expected. Slow, grateful, slightly confused. I repeated questions sometimes, forgot where I'd placed my glasses, intentionally once or twice. Let Patricia remind me about things I already knew. It wasn't difficult. People see what they want to see. And Patricia wanted to see a man in decline. So I gave her one. By August 10th, I had 3 recordings. By August 14th, I had 7. Patterns emerged. Names, dates, numbers. There was a lawyer involved, Kessler and Boone, downtown. I recognized the name vaguely. Real estate, mostly. There was talk of restructuring assets. Once the house is in the trust, it's clean, Patricia said in one recording. No complications. And him? Daniel asked. A pause. We'll place him somewhere comfortable, she replied. Don't make it sound worse than it is. Comfortable. I had seen those places. Neutral walls. Scheduled meals. Lives reduced to routines and medications. I had built bridges more personal than those rooms. Margaret listened to the recordings on August 16th. All of them. She didn't interrupt, didn't react outwardly. When the last one ended, she leaned back in her chair and exhaled slowly. Well, she said, that's about as clear as it gets. I nodded. My hands were steady. How bad? I asked. She looked at me carefully. They're planning to take everything, she said. Legally if they can, quietly if possible. And if not? Her expression hardened. Then it gets messy. I considered that. Messy wasn't my preference, but neither was theft. What are my options? I asked. Margaret reached for a notepad. First, she said, we secure what's left. Immediately, we spent the next 2 hours moving funds. Not all some were already out of reach, but enough. $94,000 transferred into a new account under a different institution. Private. Restricted access. Patricia wouldn't see it. Not yet. Second, Margaret continued, we involve an attorney. She gave me a name. Richard Halpern. Estate litigation. Third, she paused. We let them continue. I looked up. Continue. She nodded. They think they're in control, she said. That's useful. The more they act, the more evidence we gather. A trap, then, carefully constructed. I understood that language. All right, I said. The dinner on August 20th was Patricia's idea. Family night, she called it. She even lit candles. Lavender, of course. We sat around the dining table, my table, eating roast chicken that was slightly overcooked and green beans that tasted faintly of garlic. Daniel poured wine for himself and Patricia. Water for me. Dad, Patricia said midway through the meal, her tone light, almost casual. We've been thinking about simplifying things even further. I chewed slowly, swallowed. Go on. She exchanged a glance with Daniel. That look again. Practiced. Rehearsed. It's just about protection, she said. For you. For all of us. Of course it was. There's a legal tool, she continued, called power of attorney. It would allow us to manage things more efficiently if anything unexpected happened. Unexpected. Such a careful word. I set my fork down. And you think that's necessary? I asked. Daniel leaned forward. Dad, it's just precaution, he said. You've had a lot on your plate. We just want to make sure everything's handled properly. Properly. I looked at them both. Really looked. At Patricia's composed smile. At Daniel's slightly tense posture. My son. Or what remained of him. I see, I said. A pause. Long enough to make them uneasy. Then I nodded. If you think it's best, I added. Relief flashed across Patricia's face. Quick. Bright. Victorious. We do, she said softly. Of course they did. Then let's arrange it, I said. Daniel exhaled, almost laughing. Great, he said. I'll call the lawyer on Monday. Do that, I replied. I picked up my fork again, took another bite, chewed, calm, measured, across the table. Patricia reached for her wine, her hand steady, confident, certain. She thought the game was over, that the last piece was about to fall into place. And I let her think that, because sometimes the most effective way to win is to let your opponent believe they already have. The meeting was scheduled for August 25th, 10 a.m., Kessler and Boone, Suite 1400, glass building downtown, the kind with polished floors and quiet elevators where people speak in lowered voices, as if money itself might overhear them. Patricia insisted on driving. It's easier, she said. Parking there is a nightmare. Of course it was. I sat in the back seat, not the passenger seat. She had taken that, a small detail. But details accumulate. Daniel drove, hands at 10 and 2, like he used when I taught him. Funny how habits remain, even when everything else changes. You okay, Dad? He asked, glancing at me in the rearview mirror. I'm fine, I said, and again, not entirely a lie. The office smelled like leather and expensive coffee. A receptionist with perfect posture greeted us. Good morning. You must be the Collins family. Family. I almost smiled. We're here to see Mr. Boone, Patricia said smoothly. Of course. He's expecting you. We were led into a conference room. Large table, floor-to-ceiling windows. A view of the city I'd helped build, one project at a time. I took a seat at the far end. Patricia sat beside me. Daniel across. Strategic positioning. Mr. Boone entered at 10:04, mid-50s. Crisp suit. The kind of man who charged by the minute and made you grateful for it. Mr. Harris, he said, extending his hand. A pleasure. His grip was firm, professional, neutral. We exchanged pleasantries. Brief, efficient. Then the documents appeared. Neatly arranged. Tabs. Signatures marked with small yellow flags. Power of attorney. Durable. Comprehensive. Irrevocable under certain conditions. I read the title slowly. Let the silence stretch. Take your time, Dad, Patricia said gently. I nodded. I will. I turned the first page, then the second. Not skimming this time. Reading. Every clause. Every condition. Margaret had prepared me. Richard Halpern had gone further. Line by line. 2 days earlier in a much smaller, much less polished office. If you sign this as written, Halpern had said, tapping the document, they control everything. Assets, property, decisions. You become administratively irrelevant. Administratively irrelevant. A polite way of saying erased. I reached the signature page. My name printed neatly. A space waiting. Everything looked standard, Boone said. This is a common arrangement for families in your situation. My situation. Yes, I said quietly. I imagine it is. I set the pen down. Not signing. Not yet. I have a question, I added. Patricia's smile tightened. Just slightly. Of course, she said. I looked at Boone. If I were to revoke this later? I asked. How difficult would that be? A pause. Measured. It depends on the circumstances, he replied. If competency is questioned, it can become complicated. Complicated. Another careful word. I see, I said. I leaned back in my chair. Silence again. Longer this time. Daniel shifted. Patricia's fingers tapped lightly against the table. Once. Twice. Impatience, finally breaking through the surface. Dad, she said softly. We're just trying to help you. Help. That word again. I nodded slowly. I know, I said. Then I reached into my jacket pocket and placed my phone on the table, screen facing up. Before we go any further, I continued, I think it's only fair that we review something together. Patricia froze. Not dramatically. Just enough. What is that? She asked. A clarification, I said. I tapped the screen. The recording began. Once we have that, everything else is just paperwork. Patricia's voice filled the room. Clear. Undeniable. Daniel's head snapped toward her. Her face didn't collapse. Not immediately. She held it together for about 3 seconds. Then the color drained. That's taken out of context, she said quickly. I didn't respond. The recording continued. Between the transfers and the account consolidation. Well, at about, $312,000? Daniel's voice this time. A soft whistle. Not bad. Boone's expression changed. Subtly, but unmistakably. Professional neutrality gave way to something sharper. Awareness. I let the recording play. All 4 minutes. No interruptions. No explanations. Just truth. When it ended, the silence was different. Heavier. Final. Patricia recovered first. Of course she did. This is a misunderstanding, she said. Her voice controlled but tighter now. We were discussing financial planning. My money, I said. She turned to me. Dad. Don't. I interrupted. One word. Enough. Daniel leaned forward. Okay, let's just calm down. Sit back, I said without raising my voice. And he did. Instinct. Old habits. Still there. I looked at Boone. I assume, I said, that proceeding with this document under these circumstances would be unwise. Boone cleared his throat. I would strongly advise pausing, he said carefully. Good, I replied. I gathered the papers. Neatly, methodically, the way I used to collect blueprints after a failed design review. This meeting is over, I added. Patricia stood abruptly. You can't just. I can, I said. And this time, there was no softness left in my voice. No more transfers, I continued. No more access. No more decisions made in my name. Daniel looked between us, lost. Dad, we were just trying to take everything, I said. Flat. Simple. True. That's not fair, Patricia snapped. Fair. I almost laughed. Neither is $312,000, I replied. Silence again. I picked up my phone, slid it back into my pocket. There's one more thing, I said, pausing at the door. They both looked at me, waiting, hoping. Too late. I've already spoken to an attorney, I added. Patricia's composure cracked. Just a line. Just enough. And an accountant, I continued. And the bank. Daniel's face went pale. What does that mean? He asked. I opened the door. Figure out, I said. Then I stepped into the hallway. And for the first time in 11 months, I walked away with everything that was still mine. They didn't come home that night. I did. At 12:47 p.m., I unlocked my front door, stepped inside, and closed it behind me with a quiet, deliberate click. The house smelled the same as it had that morning. Lavender and something faintly artificial beneath it. Patricia's scent. Controlled. Manufactured. Temporary. I stood in the hallway longer than necessary. Listened. Silence. Real silence this time. Not the curated quiet she used to maintain. Filled with soft footsteps and scheduled concern. This was the old silence. The honest one. The kind I remembered from before. I took off my jacket. Hung it on the same hook it had occupied for years. Straighten it. Small things matter when you're reclaiming something. At 1:10 p.m., I called Richard Halpern. Well, he asked. It's done, I said. A pause. And how'd they take it? Poorly, I replied. He let out a short breath. Not quite a laugh. Good, he said. That makes the next part easier. There it was. The next part. Walk me through it again, I said, sitting down at the kitchen table. My table. Forensic accounting is already underway, he began. Margaret sent everything over. The recordings help significantly. We'll file for recovery of transferred funds. And given the evidence of intent, he paused, choosing the word. We can pursue fraud. Fraud. Such a clean word for something so personal. And the house? I asked. Protected, he said. You never transferred ownership. That was their mistake. Yes. Yes, it was. And them? I asked. Another pause. Longer this time. They'll fight, he said. Or they'll try to settle. People like that usually do one of two things when they realize the game is over. And which do you think? I asked. I think, Halpern said. They didn't expect you to push back. Neither had I. They came back at 6:32 p.m. I heard the car first. Tires on gravel. Engine cutting off a little too sharply. The front door opened without a knock. Of course it did. Patricia stepped in first. Daniel behind her. Their energy filled the hallway immediately. Sharp, unsettled, different from before. No warmth now. No performance. Daniel started. I was in the living room, sitting in Eleanor's chair. I didn't stand. That's far enough, I said. He stopped. So did she. Patricia's eyes moved quickly, taking in the room, the stillness me, assessing, always assessing. We need to talk, she said. No, I replied. You need to listen. That was new. She felt it. I could see it in the way her posture shifted. Just slightly, but enough. You made a mistake, she said, her voice tightening. A serious one. I almost smiled. No, I said. You did. Silence. Daniel stepped forward. Dad, please, let's just sit down, I said. He hesitated, then obeyed. Again instinct. He sat on the edge of the sofa. Patricia remained standing, defiant. Good. I spoke with my attorney, I began. And my accountant. The bank has been notified. Accounts are being reviewed. Funds traced. Patricia crossed her arms. You're overreacting, she said. Am I? I asked. I reached for the folder on the side table, placed it in front of them. Inside, printed statements, highlighted transfers, dates, totals, $312,000. Neat. Final. Daniel stared at the number. His face strained. That's not, he started. It is, I said. Patricia didn't look at the papers. She looked at me, directly. You gave us that money, she said. There it was, the shift. Not denial. Justification. I loaned some of it, I replied. The rest you took. Her jaw tightened. Prove it, she said. I leaned back, calm. I already have, I said. And for the first time, she hesitated. The letter arrived 3 days later. August 29th, 9:15 a.m. Certified mail. Kessler and Boone had declined further involvement. Conflict of interest, they called it. Professional language for we don't want to be part of this anymore. By September 2nd, Patricia had hired her own attorney. Aggressive, expensive, predictable. The first official response came in at 4:47 p.m. that same day. Claims of misunderstanding, shared financial decisions, verbal agreements. No mention of the recordings. Interesting, very interesting. The real moment, the one that mattered, came on September 14th. Not in a courtroom, not yet. In my own living room, 11:30 a.m. Patricia sat across from me, alone this time. No Daniel, no performance, just her. We can settle this, she said. Her voice was different now, less polished, more direct. I'm listening, I replied. She slid a document across the table. Offer. Repayment. $120,000. In installments. In exchange for dropping all claims. I looked at it, then at her. You think this is enough? I asked. It's reasonable, she said. For you, I replied. A pause. Then she leaned forward. And for the first time, the mask slipped completely. You're old, she said quietly. This will drag on for years. Legal fees alone will eat what's left. You won't win. There it was, honest at last. I nodded slowly. I might not, I said. Her eyes flickered. A small victory, she thought. Then I continued. But you won't either. Silence. Heaven. Unavoidable. I pushed the document back, toward her. No deal, I said. By October, the accounts had been partially recovered. Not all, but enough. $186,000 frozen, pending judgment. The rest scattered, spent, gone. Expensive lessons tend to be. Daniel moved out on October 9th. No goodbye, just absence. A quiet kind of cowardice. Patricia followed shortly after. Different address, different life, same habits I imagine. The house is quiet again now, not empty, just honest. I make my own coffee every morning, 8:30. Sometimes I forget the toast. Sometimes I don't. The bills are paid on time. Always. Old habits. Old strengths. They come back if you let them. Eleanor's photograph is still on the nightstand. I speak to it sometimes. Not for answers. Just to hear the truth out loud. You were right, I told her last night. About trust. About people. About me. I lost money. A significant amount. Enough to matter. Not enough to define me. Because, in the end, they didn't take everything. They couldn't. Not the house. Not the mind. And certainly not the lesson. Because the most expensive mistake I made wasn't trusting them. It was forgetting that I still knew how to stop a collapse before it took the whole structure down. Stories like this happen more often than we think. By the way, where are you watching from? Drop your city or state below. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe to the channel.